My name is Andrew Karbuski. I'm a freshman at UW-Madison, and this is my story. I grew up in a Christian household. My family's been going to Blackhawk since before I was born. So I'm very familiar with all of the trips and events and, life group for years and years and years. But I think recently one kind of challenge that God has given to me has been to really think about where my relationship with Him is at outside of church. Where am I really inviting Him into my life to make substantial, visible changes when I don't have, the things like, a life group to go to or a trip to go on. And I think that's been accentuated by, this past season of COVID with all those things, not being stuff that I can go to. And the honest answer to that for the majority of my life, at least until recently, has been that I haven't been. I haven't read the Bible on my own really at all, and if I prayed, it would really only be maybe if I wanted something. And so He's kind of been exposing me all these little ways that I just subtly shut Him out, as opposed to just, inviting Him in and always having His word on my lips and, spending time with Him and talking to Him, because He's my friend. He wants me to bring Him stuff. He wants me to lament to Him and to bring Him thanksgivings. And He delights when I run to Him. I think He's also kind of been showing me how that's not just going to be a one and done thing. It's not just going to be something that I can check off a list and go, yep, I'm in right relationship with God now. It's a process and it's a journey that I'm going to be on for the rest of my life. And I'm always going to need to be proactive about it. And I'm always going to need to set aside intentional time just to be with Him and to talk with Him. And I'm always going to need to seek Him, because those who seek His righteousness shall find it. It's really kind of emphasized like, it's up to me. It's up to me to make the decision every single day to invite Him in and not just sit back and wait.
Well, hey Cam, we are so glad that you're joining us, and we are taking a few weeks again to go over some pretty difficult things that some of us could be struggling with in the current season that we're in. We're talking about loneliness, anxiety, how to cope with all the loss, and we're so glad that you're joining us for these important conversations. So with that, let's go ahead and go back to Sandra as she talks about these topics with us. Well, hey everyone, so glad that you're joining us again. If I haven't had the chance to meet you, my name is Michael and this is Lynne, and we are a part of Blackhawk's college age ministry team. And we are excited that Sandra with Blackhawk's Care Ministry is joining us again. This is our third week of just talking about different things that we all have been navigating on different levels in this season. And today we're going to focus on loss. How do we cope with all of the different types of losses that we're experiencing? With that, Sandy, I just kind of want to jump right in. Yeah. Knowing that there's just been a lot of different types of losses this year, on a broad level, what are the types of losses that we all could be experiencing?
Yeah, absolutely. Boy, I think of when this began, which seems like so long ago. It's really like 10 months ago, and we're coming up on a year. And I think loss is really wrapped around when you're going to hear some recurring themes. Our hopes, dreams, expectations turn into something completely unexpected. And so I think of loss as resulting from when there's something's different than what we anticipated, or something is disrupted from what we were hoping it would be. And then there's also things that we thought were going to happen that were non-existent. So I think of proms. I work with high school ministries. So last spring, there weren't proms. Their graduations almost looked like they weren't going to be happening. They looked so completely different than what we anticipated. There's this like constant readjustment going on that has occurred. There's my daughter graduated from college. She was fully intending to take certain steps in order to graduate and then kind of launch her career. And it has looked nothing like any of that. And that's a loss. And, going to school, and you're thinking, okay, you get to see your friends. You're either returning to college or you're coming for the first time. If you're returning, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to see my friends. I hang out on campus. I have expectations of what college life looks like. And it's not any of that. So that doesn't mean that it's irrelevant. Those are relevant changes and differences that you are having to adjust to and either accept or rail against or make a decision you're going to do it differently. All of them have faced you with decisions that you were not anticipating having to make that are related to adjustment, and then create a sense of loss.
It's so interesting what you're saying, Sandy, because I don't know about you, Michael, but I feel like the word loss, so often we equate it with the death of a person. That's what loss that's the first thing that comes into my mind. But what I hear you saying is that there are all different types of levels and all different types of loss.
That's absolutely right. That's right. And depending on how strongly you were standing on the things that you ultimately lost, determines very much how you're going to respond to that and what level of disappointment, what level of grief you might be feeling from it. And so that also is unpredictable, and we don't really do so well with unpredictability. And so, there are all kinds of levels and all kinds of grief and all kinds of disparity and unfairness in it all that can leave us feeling all kinds of different emotions.
So it seems to me that, certainly the three of us knowing you, but really every person out there right now, every college-age person watching, we've all experienced loss this year. Like, without a doubt, there are plans that were made that were canceled, lots of them, and expectations that were missed and dreams that have been put on hold. So what would you say to the person right now who's listening and maybe for the first time realizing, wow, I have some losses that I've never actually even confronted the emotion of it? How would someone go about doing that, addressing their losses and coping with it? It's quick and easy, right?
Yeah. Super easy question.
When you're kind of discovering, oh man, sometimes there's just it's like, man, I am ornery, man, I am crying, I'm separating myself out, I have an attitude problem.
Yeah.
All those things can be signs of grief and disappointment. And I think there are three things that I feel like are really, really important in dealing with loss. It is naming it. It's being honest that it's there. And sometimes we don't feel it immediately. I shared with you all that I had some lost pregnancies. And with my first one, I just kind of bounced right back and moved on with my life. And then I had another one several months later, and I gave myself permission to acknowledge, oh man, this changes some things for me.
Wow.
And I had to start to really think about, what do I need to adjust about my expectations? And so I gave myself permission to grieve.
Wow.
And that meant that I gave myself permission to feel sad. And I took some time off. I rearranged my life a little bit, a week. Not too long, the first time around. But, it might be you take an afternoon off or whatever you're doing, you take a break and you sort through, why am I feeling this way? What is this about? I'm disappointed. This is a loss for me. And then I gave myself permission, and we talked about this in a previous talk, to cry about it. And to get angry about it. So first there's this feeling. There's a phrase in our world we talk about, feel the feelings.
Feel the feelings.
Oh, I do that.
Don't run away from it. Feel the feelings. It's so fun. And then there is this other part of it that's lamenting. Chris talked about lamenting a few weeks back in one of his sermons. And, and for me, lamenting is the action. So you have feel the feelings when you're grieving that loss.
Hey, Sandy, I'm just thinking, could you just actually give just a basic, what is lamenting for someone who might not actually know?
Yeah, okay. And that is a really good question. They are so close together. Grief and grieving and lamenting are so close together. And to me, lamenting is about there's a taking of action when I'm lamenting. I mean, I'm really engaged in lamenting. So I'm not just feeling my feelings. I'm not just, I'm okay, I'm taking it to task, and I am going to God, and I am like, hey, what is going on? And I over the several years back learned about weeping and wailing. I was like, what is all that? What is that weeping and wailing thing? But I've gotten really familiar with weeping and wailing. So when I'm lamenting, I am trying to release a pressure valve.
Wow.
And so I got pressure building up in me, and it's like I am just overrun with it. So I'm looking for places where I can just feel it all, respond to it all, in the safety of nobody else seeing me, because it's messy. I think lamenting is messy.
Wow.
And so you either want to do that alone with God or with someone who you really, really trust, who isn't going to get freaked out by your messy grieving. It's like this additional, your messy lamenting. And but I keep my lamenting personally to the confines of my house, my car, the woods.
Yeah, when I first found out, we all might have experienced this in different ways, but when I wanted to go inside of Chick-fil-A, because if you want another sauce, it's 10 steps. And the first time I saw the closed sign in the pandemic, I went on a drive and I let God know exactly how I felt.
That's right. And that's a good lighthearted, because what I've just described is pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But we can lament simple disappointments, and we can lament big things. And but lamenting is kind of this permission to be all of it.
Yeah.
And before God, actually, to be all of it before God, and know that He's okay with that. He's good with that.
Yeah.
And He's going to receive it, and then He's going to there's this process of where when you are done lamenting, or when you come to at least some closure of that lamenting, He's already provided some healing balm.
Wow.
What it is that you're lamenting. It already starts to occur, and you can feel this lift. I feel like after lament, there's this lift that starts to happen, and you may need to do that again. I mean, I've done plenty of lamenting, but I'm comfortable doing it now.
Yeah.
So I'm not afraid of it, and it's a real helpful thing.
Sandy, it's so helpful the way you're talking about lamenting, because it actually reminds me of just the way that we do relationship with other people. I think about the people in my world who matter to me, who I trust, and when something goes wrong or they allow something to happen, I have no problem, trust me, going to them and saying, I am upset about this. Like, what happened? Why did this take place? And I'm just reminded from what you're saying that in a similar way, we can go to God and just have an open, raw heart about what it is we may be experiencing.
That's absolutely correct. One of the cool things, when I have looked at lament in the past, because I deal with a lot of grief and lament is actually a very Christian or biblical. It's a very biblical term, and it states that. And so it's Old Testament and New Testament, so it's not just about Christian, but and so it is very much this piece of like going to God and releasing it all, and knowing that He will receive that, and that even at a deeper level than what any of your other relationships that you would normally go to, sometimes they might get flooded from the level and the intensity of what it is that you're needing to release. It might be too much for the people in your lives, but it's not too much for God. And the beautiful thing that happens with that exchange between you and God in the place of lament is that He so completely can meet you there and will meet you there. And then there is this reframing that starts to happen. When you've been able to release it all, and I think of that pressure cooker, like, the pressure cooker is going to explode if you don't release the valve. And so that valve has been released through your lament, and then he has this way of just clearing your thinking, soothing your emotions, giving you an opportunity to rest, and then he starts to fill it with hope. Because he is the God of hope, of joy, of love, of peace, all the things that you're probably not experiencing in the place of grief and lament. And so he has this way of restoring us to the very gifts that he intends for us in our lives. And so I think God's position is like, come and lament with me as soon as possible. Come and lay it at my feet so that I can provide soothing care and comfort, so that I can breathe new life into you. Because I have abundant life for you. That's the truth. And so there's this reframing that we get to do as believers, where we go back to the truth about who God is and what he has for us, what he wants for us. So with all of our disappointments and all of our losses, there's something beyond all of that we get to step out of. We don't have to stay stuck in our grief. We get to move through it, and we get to see the possibilities and the options that are ours, because we are his children. And that's how he cares for us when we are brokenhearted. Our hearts are near to him. He's near to us when we're brokenhearted.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut that off, but I just wanted to say I love that. And lament for me, it looks like, sometimes I'm just crying out to God, but I think the most common lament that I experience is going on a walk with God and just letting him know how things are. It's not super emotional, but it's, it can be, but often it's just this conversation of, man, things aren't going too good right now. And why? Like, help me, God, or show me what's going on and show me the hope. Yes. And it's in that process of just having a conversation, or if it's too cold outside, I'll just look to, God, you're here, you're sitting on that chair over there. Show me the hope in this. And often in that, I do feel that pressure relieved, and I do get this sense of hope. I don't have an answer, but I know that I'm listened to, and I know that I'm cared for in that.
That's right. The honesty of oneself that I've had a loss. Like, you started out by saying, you don't think you've had any losses. I think that's how you started the conversation. The honesty of being able to say, actually, this is a loss. This is a disappointment. There is a loss here. Gets you on that process of what you just said sooner rather than later. You raised your light Chick-fil-A. Some of our losses, right? There are all kinds of, depth of loss. But if you get into a practice of just being honest with God about your disappointments and your losses, even if they are minor losses, prepares you for when you have really hard losses. Then you are able to press into those sooner rather than later, and more completely, so that they don't carry on with you and impact your life. There are all kinds of people who are dealing with deep depression, all kinds of things that are related to grief and not knowing how to lament losses of their lives. So it's a beautiful, that's great. You want to start with the light ones so you can move into the high ones.
This has been so great, Sandy, and I know that we could keep talking forever here because it's so interesting and we're learning a lot. But I'm just thinking it would be great as we kind of close our time, if you have a word of encouragement to someone who may be really thinking, it's time that I cope with my loss. I know that you talked about grieving, lamenting, and reframing, and I just wonder if you have a word of encouragement from there.
Thank you. My word of encouragement, really, to any of you who are feeling lost at whatever level, that, you come to the care world, you're just going to hear this over and over again. You are not alone. You're not the only one, and you don't need to do it alone. God is fully aware, wants to meet you there, and he uses people, he uses us to do that. And so don't Don't be afraid, right? We are constantly told to do not fear. And this is a place where we are fearfully and wonderfully made by him to be in relationship with him and to be in relationship with one another. And we will fall short and we will be disappointed. But he has a way of taking all of those disappointments and all of our shortcomings and making them into useful, beautiful ways of encouraging one another. And so I leave you with hope, I hope.
Yeah.
You will press in.
Well, thanks so much, Sandy, for that word of encouragement and that hope, and for talking about this really important subject. It's these conversations for the last few weeks. If you've missed a week, I just want to encourage you to go back and listen to it. Have been really great. Thank you for just sharing the wisdom that you've learned and just what it could look like for us to move towards health and move towards God and move towards community. And thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you next week.
Thank you.
Searched the world and he couldn't feel me. Man's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. Every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. To show you my weakness, my failures and flaws, Lord, you see them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the same God in the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Help me say, oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. Lord, there's nothing is better than you. Stay together. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing. Oh, nothing is better than you. Woo. Hey. Here we go. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. Help me say,
Turn mourning to dancing.
you give beauty for ashes.
You give beauty for ashes.
You turn shame into
Turn shame into glory.
Wow, what a great conversation we just had. What great worship. We're so glad that we've been able to talk about these different difficult situations that this season might be presenting to us. And I just want to say as we're closing that if you are coping with any sort of loss, we're here with you. But especially if you are coping with a loss that just seems so big and so difficult, maybe something that you were really planning for ended. Maybe there's something in school that's really difficult for you. Maybe you've been trying to find a job and you couldn't, and it's difficult. Or maybe you're experiencing a death of a loved one. If the loss that you're experiencing can seem almost too big to manage, we're here for you. If the loss that you're experiencing seems manageable, but it's still loss and still difficult, we're here for you. We would love for you to email us at cam@blackhawkchurch.org. We'd love to have a conversation with you. Again, we have a care ministry at Blackhawk Church, and that can partner with you, walk with you in different ways as you're coping with loss. We just want to let you know that as you cope with loss, you're not alone. And with that, Cam, it's been great having these conversations with you, and we'll see you next week.